You know, what we think we know in medicine is always changing. What's solid fact one day can be totally upended by new research the next. And in a field like cancer research, that evolution isn't just academic. It's the difference between life and death. Today, we're diving into a paper that seriously challenges a fundamental belief in breast cancer diagnosis, one that might be having fatal consequences.
So just imagine for a second, you get a diagnosis, but you're told it's a non-invasive cancer. It's contained, it's manageable. You'd probably breathe a huge sigh of relief, right? But what if that label, that word safe, was completely, dangerously wrong?
Well, here's the heart of the issue. A team of researchers is making a powerful case that a very dangerous, invasive cancer is being widely mislabeled with a deceptively harmless name: ductal carcinoma in situ, or DCIS. Now that in situ part means in its original place. It's supposed to mean contained. But the evidence we're about to see shows this thing is anything but. And this mislabeling, it's leading to undertreatment with absolutely tragic results.
So you have to ask, how could such a massive mistake be so common? Well, to figure that out, we've got to follow a team of what I'd call medical detectives, who decided it was time to take a much closer look.
This is where Professor Laszlo Tabar and his international research group come into the picture. They're a big deal in the world of radiology. And they didn't just look at the old mammograms. Nope, they went right back to square one, re-examining the basic anatomy of the breast to really understand where these cancers start and how they act.
And their whole investigation kicked off with a pretty surprising discovery about breast anatomy. So on the left, you see a normal duct system in a breast lobe. It kind of branches out like a tree. But look at the image on the right. Professor Tabar's team found that a major duct isn't just a simple little tube. It's pleated, a lot like a saguaro cactus. And why is that such a big deal? Because it means the duct can expand, like a lot, creating this huge hidden space for cancer cells to just grow and grow. And that one little detail, well, it changes everything.
So because they understood the anatomy so well, the team was able to pinpoint 6 very distinct telltale signs of this dangerous cancer on medical images. It's like they've created a field guide for radiologists to finally spot what's been hiding in plain sight this whole time. Okay, before we get to the signs, let's get one term straight: imaging biomarkers. Just think of them as visual fingerprints. They're specific, repeatable patterns you can see on an image, like a mammogram, that basically scream, hey, this specific disease is right here. They're the clues our medical detectives were searching for.
All right, so 4 of the 6 biomarkers are all about these tiny little specks of calcium, what doctors call calcifications. But here's the thing, not all calcifications are created equal. They fall into 2 main groups based on how they're formed. One type comes from the debris of dying cancer cells, a process called necrosis. The other type forms in a fluid that the cancer cells actually produce.
So let's look at that first group, the ones dominated by cell death or necrosis. When these super aggressive cancer cells grow so fast that they outgrow their own blood supply, they start to die off. And they leave behind this calcified debris. On a mammogram, this creates patterns that look like fragmented casts of the ducts they were in. Sometimes it even looks like a dotted snakeskin pattern. When you see this, it's a huge red flag for a really aggressive, fast-growing cancer.
Now the second group is a little trickier because it's fluid-dominated. In these cases, the cancer cells are busy making this protein-rich fluid that fills up the ducts. And this fluid can form calcifications that look like skipping stones or even a delicate little string of pearls. What's so crucial here is that while one of these little specks might look pretty harmless on its own, it's their pattern, that linear arrangement along the duct, that's the dead giveaway of the cancer underneath.
Biomarker number 5 is something you wouldn't even see on a regular mammogram. It's spontaneous nipple discharge. What's happening here is that fluid being made by the cancer cells is actually leaking out. To find the cancer, doctors have to use a special X-ray called the galactogram, where they inject dye into the duct to finally reveal the cancer that's been hiding inside.
And the last sign, number 6, might be the sneakiest of all: architectural distortion. Take a look. There are no calcifications, no obvious tumor. Instead, the cancer is creating so many new, tiny little ducts that it physically pulls and tugs on the surrounding breast tissue, warping it into this kind of star-like shape. The cancer literally reveals itself by changing the architecture of the breast. It's subtle, but it's there.
So these 6 signs are an incredibly powerful toolkit for diagnosis. But why does getting it right matter so much? To really understand the human cost of getting it wrong, the paper walks us through a case study that's, well, it's pretty powerful.
This is the story of a 63-year-old woman. She went in for her routine mammogram, and this is what they saw: extensive, fragmented casting-type calcifications. Now, based on everything we just learned, this should be setting off alarm bells for an aggressive cancer. But because there wasn't a distinct lump or mass, her diagnosis went down a very different road.
So, what was her diagnosis? They called it DCIS. Non-invasive, the paper puts it bluntly, what was obviously an invasive cancer was mistakenly called in situ. And just 3 years after that diagnosis, this woman died from breast cancer that had spread all through her body.
And here is the tragic proof. This slide shows a sample of the cancer that had spread to her lungs, and it was taken during the autopsy. The structure you see here is identical to the cancer they found in her breast. The so-called non-invasive cancer was, in fact, the killer. It was invasive the entire time.
You know, a single heartbreaking story like that makes the researchers' point impossible to ignore. This isn't just an academic paper anymore. It's an urgent call to action to change the entire standard of care.
Okay, so let's just nail down the key takeaways here. First and foremost, the cancer we've been talking about, which the authors called ductal adenocarcinoma of the breast, is invasive. It should never, ever be called DCIS. Second, those 6 imaging biomarkers we went through, they are the absolute key to spotting it correctly and early. And knowing this allows doctors to choose a much more aggressive and frankly more effective treatment. And finally, you can't see the whole problem with a tiny sample. You need large format pathology to really see the full extent of these cancers.
The paper's conclusion pulls no punches. It says the evidence is overwhelming. It's not just a suggestion, it's a necessity that we change how this very common and very commonly misunderstood cancer is diagnosed and managed. The time for debating is over.
And that really leaves us with one final critical question. This is about so much more than just changing a name on a chart. It's a total shift in how we see this disease. Armed with this new field guide from Professor Tabar and his team, just how many lives can we save by simply training ourselves to finally see the danger that's been hiding in plain sight all along?